And if you could just introduce yourself.
I play keyboards in Alice.
My name is Anna Maria, and I am the founder and vocalist in the band Vajra.
What was the initial start?
Yeah, so we all have pretty storied histories.
I was just bored during COVID. Did a little demo, put it out, and it was pretty well received by the community. And
always had a thing for horror punk and stuff.
Something that started with me and a laptop during quarantine, and just like, oh yeah, you know, all those times I said, if only I didn't have to work my job all the time, and now it's like I could have time to do that. Well, now this is that.
All right. And if you could just introduce yourself to the fine folks at home, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm Kodie Krypt from the band Grave Corps. I play bass and do backing vocals.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. So let's talk a little bit about the project. How did this all start? Like, where did the band begin, and what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, so we're old. We started back in probably 2006, 2007, back when I was in my early 20s. And the band was just kind of, well, first I should say Scott AD, our rhythm guitar player, and myself were the two remaining original guys from 2006, 2007. But anyhow, we started back then, and it was kind of, I'd kind of played in punk bands, and, you know, it's like, it's fun, you have a good time, but I don't know, I had a wide range of influences, and I felt that I wanted to do something more, and I wanted to kind of combine all of them and kind of do a passion project. And I actually came up with like the name and logo probably in 2003, 2004. And here in Iowa, people that like the kind of music that I liked were a rarity back then. So ran across Scott and pretty much pitched him the idea. And then, yeah, he's kind of my A1 from day one. We started piecing it all together and went from there.
That's awesome. So over the course of the history of your project, have there been any moments or things that really have stood out to you that you look back on and you're like, wow, that was super cool and a lot of fun to be a part of?
Yeah, I mean, the band as a whole, I kind of look at it like it's it's a band, don't get me wrong, but I look at it like it's kind of my lifelong art project. So it's kind of a tricky question because I always feel like we're doing something, and then it just feels like we're kind of always gradually building. So to me, every part of it has been fun and a step up the ladder. So I don't know if I can pinpoint one thing. I mean, I will say we signed our first recording contract back in 2008. We had been a band for about a year, and that was pretty cool. Like having it was a smaller label out of New Jersey, but having them reach out to us and be interested, and there was a lot of hype around that. It was a really cool time, very exciting time. And then you start road dogging it, and you're sleeping in a van, and yeah, don't know if I could do it nowadays.
Oh no, I completely understand. I was in a band in college around 2007, and we were touring Oregon and Washington, and you start getting people like looking at you and all that attention, and then the labels start coming at you, and like it's such a good feeling to like have that come, like all that like positive energy. And what I really appreciate about what you said was that this is like a lifelong art project for you. Some people, it's like they try really hard for a little bit, and if it doesn't make it, they bail. But like you guys have been doing it for, as you said, quite a while now, and you're building momentum, and you've been building steam up to the point where you are now. And I have a lot of respect for that. It takes a lot of commitment and a lot of work to get where you guys are, and I think that's really cool.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, full disclosure, I was in a pretty decent punk band in the area, and so there was hype. Me and one of the other members branched off to do this. Our original keyboard player, Eric Allen Poe. So we had a lot of people at our first show. There's like 300-400 kids there, and we were terrible. It was really bad. And afterwards there was some like, yeah, well, you know what, maybe it's not meant to be, but I'm glad we pushed forward. So.
For sure, for sure. So talking about that, like obviously in order to have done that show in the first place, in order to have taken that chance, you had to have had the music written and ready. And I'm great at terrible segues, so we're gonna do that. How how when you're writing music, what who would you say are the musicians that like deeply inspired the style that you guys have created? I know that it's a mix of a lot of different things. I do hear punk in it. I also hear, because you guys do some or have done some pretty fun covers in the past. A lot of like I wouldn't say necessarily like 80s kind of rock kind of stuff, but you also have like metal influences, not like modern metal core, but I hear like heavy metal influences in your guys' stuff predominantly, especially in this newer stuff that you guys have done. So what I'm curious about is who are the bands that have inspired you to write the way that you have?
Oh man, yeah, it's a melting pot of stuff. Which as the lineups change too, and like different people come in with different influences, it's cool to see, where that goes. So, I mean, the big hitters are obviously the Misfits, right? I mean, they're the big one. I'm sure every band that claims horror references the Misfits. So, but I mean, they are. It's kind of partially where it all started. They kind of kicked the doors open for me. I was not a naturally talented musician, so I would struggle to learn songs from other bands I liked, and then I discovered the Misfits, and they checked all the boxes, man. I mean, it was here's the image, here's the energy, here's these insanely infectious songs and like almost pop melodies or doo-wop or whatever over, like super aggressive, like downstrummed, punk rock. And yeah, it just all of a sudden I could play these songs and like it just, I don't know, it blew the doors wide open. So anyhow, Misfits, but I also come from the world of Kiss and Alice Cooper and Wasp and Rob Zombie. Some of the metal that you're probably hearing. Huge into Slayer. I love Slayer. And then Hatebreed. I like some, like hardcore stuff. But yeah, those are kind of, I'm all over the board though. I mean, I love Elvis. I love Prince. Like I kind of go Shooter Jennings. Which a good song's a good song, right? So
Absolutely. And that was something I actually noticed when I was listening through, your discography and everything, was that you do have a wide variety of influences. Obviously, like you just said. And one of the things that I really liked was the ability you all seem to have to craft a solid song. That's something that I am really, really big on. A lot of people look at the art of song crafting, and if they see it's a verse, chorus, whatever, they roll their eyes and they say, oh, it's simple, and they do, whatever. But then you listen to the music they write and it's garbage, right? Like, no offense, but like a lot of people don't understand that you can have like complex sectional music, but it has to be good. You have to be a good songwriter to pull that off. And that's one of the things that, I really admired about the way you guys are doing things is a lot of times, it's a straightforward rock and roll song, as far as verse, chorus, and structure and everything. But I have noticed that maybe it's through more of the metal or more of the classic rock influence, there are a lot of songs that you guys have that have fairly complex structures, and they change it from rhythms sometimes, but not too far out of the range, and it all feels like it fits together like it should be. And that's something that is not easy to do, no matter what level of musician you are and in your songwriting. So what would you say, would that come from more from like listening to, like you were saying, Kiss and Rob Zombie, or is that more of the heavy metal influence, or where do you think your influence in like structure comes from?
I don't have a clear answer on that one, to be honest. A lot of it's structurally just based on my ear. Like I feel like a song, it shows you where to go, right? Like that, or at least for me, I guess. I mean, everybody's different, right? But like, so we'll, usually a song starts with myself and whoever's playing lead guitar in the band, which we have our third lead guitar player that just joined right now, so about to start writing with him, so hopefully the trend continues on. But usually it was Christ Levine at one point, and then Zachy Massacre at another point. So I'll usually have an idea, and I will come up with some riffs. I usually have a title, the lyrics, and then like I kind of have like a feel I want to go for. Beware the Blood Moon's one of our probably heavier songs, but I was listening to a lot of Slayer at that point. New Slipknot album had dropped, and I was checking that out. And then Earth AD's always,
Yeah.
within a couple plays. So, so I just kind of put that all together, and I just I had what did I have? Like the main riff, verse riff. I had like the crash chord part, and you just kind of, I don't know, like I pitch it, and then the lead guitar player and I start noodling around, figuring things out. And then, I'll just be like, okay, let's, half verse the first time. Let's double up the verse the second time. Like, feels natural. Oh, let's bring that crash chord thing back again here at the end before the last chorus. Let's do a completely different outro. Like, I don't know, each part, it just kind of, I don't know, for me at least anyhow, like the song dictates itself, like where it needs to go, or at least to my ear. So
And is that do you think that's a product of just experience and having done this, like you said, for that extended period of time and being like listening to other bands and seeing what works?
yeah, I mean, if you listen to stuff off our first album from like 2008 or whatever, it's very verse, chorus, maybe a solo, like that kind of thing. And then towards the back half of the album, we had a drummer join named Daniel DK before we did the first album, and he's I don't know, there's different views on drummers and songwriting credits, but the dude's a songwriter, and he has a great ear for structure. And honestly, I probably picked up a lot from him, because the last couple songs on that album, one of them is called Zombie Bride, and it's a short 1.5-minute punk song, but like you can hear that I had learned how to put together a pre-chorus and a bridge, like different things like that. And then Midnight Feature, the last song, is definitely a little more epic in scope, and Eric Allen Poe and myself and Daniel kind of put that one together there. And so I think it comes from working with the different musicians and them bringing their influences in, and then just myself also growing as a songwriter over the years. And day one, it was like, what are the Misfits doing? Which yes, the Misfits do a lot of things in increments of like 3s or 6s rather than like 2 times or 4 times. So like I just kind of inadvertently picked up on that. So we do that a lot, and sometimes that drives certain members mad. They're like, why are we doing 6 of these? We should be doing 8 of them. I'm like, no, 6 works.
6 is fine. We don't need any more.
Yeah, 6 is good. But yeah, no, just I think, I don't know, man, everything's a learning experience, right? Like every song you hear, everything, like I pick up on things. I mean, honestly, some modern pop that's worked its way into things too. Like, I don't know, man. So
Okay. Well, when it comes to writing the songs, I know before we hit record, we talked a little bit about the lyrics and stuff like that. How does that start in for the band? Like, what's the process look like for that?
So our former singer, Arlie Vaughn, our original singer, that was the dude that was with us the first 15 years of the band. Him and I, like, we worked pretty well together. But usually it would start with a title, right? Like I also kind of always dreamt growing up of writing movies or comic books or stuff like that. So they're like my little stories, and so I'll think of something like Horror Show, which is actually a sequel to Midnight Feature, and then I kind of have a story in my head and I start hashing it out. So sometimes there's even little scripts that exist that get melded down to lyrics, and then Arlie and myself would just kind of, I bounce it off him, and he's the one that actually has to sing it. So I tend to put a lot of words into a section, and then he's like, I can't say all these. It's like the Glenn Danzig thing where he there's so many words you can't, it's so fast you can't quite understand. I come from that world, so But anyhow, so then you know, like he would kind of refine it back a little, and then I'd go back and be like, well, we need this in here and this in here to tell the story, you know. And it was just kind of a process. Some of them were very 50-50 collaborations. There was a couple where he wrote more than I did. And then some of them are just all me. And then a couple years ago, Tracy Von Krypt took over on lead vocals, and kind of the same process, a little different. Been doing a little, probably handling more of the soul songwriting as she's kind of getting her footing there. But she did write a good amount on Collateral Damage, and then another song called Queen of the Damned on the acoustic EP. So she wrote a good chunk of that one too. So.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool. When you're writing the lyrics, are there any habits in particular that like say you were giving advice to an amateur musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them as far as like are good habits to get into, just get that like steady workflow going?
Oh man, it's always different. Like for me, it's inspiration strikes when inspiration strikes. So sometimes I could have a bank of songs or song ideas. Sometimes I go through a drought where I'm like, I can't think of anything, and then all of a sudden it just flows out. Like we have a new single called Better Off Dead, and I had like one line of the song and there was probably 50 rewrites on that, but then I hit the one where I was like, okay, here it is. And, you know, inspiration went from there. One thing I've learned about myself as a lyricist, or with the verses, for whatever reason, I was like, I could write a really solid first verse, and I got the chorus and the hook, and I might have a bridge idea, but I would always struggle with the second verse. And so it's a little way I trick myself, where when I start writing a first verse, I just keep writing for as long as I can. And then then I split it into two. It's just a way I trick myself into it.
Hey, that's actually really good advice, especially like if you know that something like that's an ongoing thing. I completely get that. Like if you're on that roll, just don't stop. Keep going.
Yep. Because then you can split it in two, and then you can just move little things if you need to match the story or whatnot. But yeah, that's definitely something mental trick I have.
So of the songs, new or old, I know every song is a musician's baby. I understand that. But of the songs, new or old, are there any songs in particular that stick out to you as either your favorite to listen to or your favorite to play? Because
Oh,
sometimes those aren't the same.
yeah. I mean, they're all pretty fun to play. I rate my personal bass lines to be like fairly simple, because we put on a show live, right? Like, and we're not standing still. And I just want to make sure that they're powerful, they're impactful, but also I don't have to think about them. So they're all pretty fun to play, to be honest with you. But my favorite song it's a song we did called Rise back in 2017, and it's a little more of an epic tale. Kind of, it's like 6.5 minutes long, and tells a story, and it's very cinematic. And it starts with like the acoustic and the vocals, and then it kind of climbs, and the army of the dead in the song is marching, and then it kind of picks up into the slamming verse, and then kind of escalates, and then by the end of the song it's going double time, and there's all the vocals going off. And just like as a songwriter, it's probably my proudest moment. So I love that song. Live, I noticed it did not translate the cinematic scope. So we actually ended up trimming it down for the live version, where we just do a little bit of the acoustic intro and then pretty much kick right into the section before the verse. And we cut about 2.5 minutes out of the intro. So, but yeah, you never know. You don't know until you play live, right?
No, exactly. And I'm that's an interesting point. So speaking of like playing things live, given how long you guys have been doing this, has live performance affected the way has it affected the way you've written? Like, is there now an intentionality behind it, knowing that these will be translated eventually live? Obviously, you still have to cut it down and stuff like that, like you were saying. but with the
Mhm.
experience of live performance, sometimes you learn what audiences like over time. And so I'm wondering if that has influenced at all in the way you guys like, are we going to write this kind of song for, for like a start to the set list, or do you guys think it all in those terms, or is it just you write what you write?
Yeah, I mean, I try to we kind of like everything has to be a banger, right? Like just the way that it's a banger can be different. We have a new single called Collateral Damage out, and it's very melodic, infectious, but I still feel it's a banger. Then we have a song like New Disaster, which is just a stomper and a banger, but it's a different kind. And then we have Blood Drops, which is kind of a doo-wop-y song, but still a banger. So I don't know. And then where that all comes from, and I don't know if this answers your question or if I'm going on a tangent with this, but at a certain point with Grave Corps, like after our Reanimated EP, like 10 years ago, I hit a point as a songwriter where I would write some other stuff and I would kind of just be like, yeah, well, I'll work on another project, or I'll put this in the bank for something else, or it doesn't really fit the mold. Or my guitar player, Christ Levine, same thing. Like he'd show me stuff sometime, be like, well, it's not really right for Grave Corps. And at a certain point, one, I just realized I have no time or money to do another project ever, right? But Grave Corps my baby, and we kind of talked about the lifelong art project thing. And so I just was like, well, why can't it all be Grave Corps? Like mostly when I write lyrics, it falls under the horror comic booky style genre anyhow. I was like, why do I have to pigeonhole it? And that kind of just blew the doors wide open on everything. And then it was kind of like anything goes. We can write any kind of song. I mean, we've debuted songs on the radio where like a song like Blood Drops, someone was like, oh, it sounds like Meatloaf or Elvis. And then Beware the Blood Moon, someone's like, dude, this sounds like Slayer. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, show me another band that's been compared to Meatloaf and Slayer. So I wear that like a badge of honor. And then the art project thing too, just further going on a tangent since I brought it up, but like Grave Corps to me can be anything. I mean, we're going to be doing a Grave Corps video game at some point.
Oh,
There
that's
is
awesome.
a Grave Corps comic book in the works there, because the whole Grave Corps as a band, the whole concept is based off a storyline. We all have characters and so on and so forth. But like there's gonna be Grave Corps action figures. We have Grave Corps skateboard decks, trading cards, Valentines. Like I want to do a movie. Like why not? I can do it all under this banner, right? So
Oh no, absolutely. Like, as my audience knows, I've mentioned this a couple of times on a few other episodes. I've been working on a project myself kind of in the background, and I'm that we're here to focus on you. That's for my own episodes. But I completely understand what you're saying about like the storyline and all of the things that you're talking about, the Valentine's cards and all of that. Like once you really get into this world, once you start making music or whatever, it's really easy to like want to get people into the same space. And I think you mentioned, I believe you mentioned Kiss earlier, and I always think about like how they have the Kiss Army, or I think about Ghost and how they have like that whole thing going on, and like how in depth and how much there's all these things and aspects that really tie things together. Not just obviously bands are about music, but but there's so much more than that. They're a live performance. It's a chance for people to interact with an artist in a way that no other medium can give. And sometimes that spills over into other things. We recently had Dickie Devil from Dickie Devil and the Deviants on the show, and he was talking to me about the importance of, for him doing like videos and stuff. More people see his videos than knew about his music, and it's been translating into people hearing his music. So you talking about like wanting to do a movie and comic books and having this whole storyline, I think that's really cool. I think that good bands understand that you're not just producing music, you are producing a show, you're producing something for people to engage with. So I think that's really cool. Before we get going, I believe, Kodie, you said during the break you wanted to mention something.
Yeah, yeah, you mentioned the Kiss Army, and I make this joke sometimes, so I thought I'd elaborate a little bit. But Grave Corps, Kiss Army, it's there's a direct correlation there. I always tell people, I'm like, we could have just called the band the Kiss Fits, and that probably would have summed everything up. So, and you said it's more than just a band as well, and that's kind of, I get that from Gene Simmons and Jerry Only. Like, it's a brand and it's a band, and that's something that resonated with me from a pretty young age, and I kind of had an understanding of that right out the gates, or well, I thought I had an understanding of it anyhow. So but yeah, no, man, like it's all an inclusive thing. Even we just recently did a pretty big live show, and we recorded and filmed it for a live album. And I want to do a spectacle, right? Like, I'm not going to stand there. People pay to see a show, right? Like, not necessarily hear a show. So we have samples in between, so rather than any like dead space or anything like that, the samples all tell a story. This particular concert, it was pretty much the apocalypse through the view of a radio announcer. So it starts with, like, the guy in the intro track. We got like the low bassy Terminator 2 thing going on, and machine guns going off, and helicopters going by, and he kind of starts with like, I'm getting reports of people getting bitten, blah blah blah. And then we play a couple songs, and then the lights go down, some strobes are going, and like then like the radio announcer is getting more and more fevered, like apparently the zombie outbreak. And then by the end of the concert, we like hit the last song, and then lights go down, and it ends with him kind of doing his like oh, Godspeed, dear listener. Oh God, they're in the control room. No, no, no. And then it goes to static and stuff. So, there's a narrative going out on throughout the live show that ties into, our backdrops all kind of make a dilapidated city, look and stuff like that. And, I don't know, make it all one thing, make it tell a story, so.
So let's talk a little bit about that, though. You've mentioned a couple of times that Grave Corpse is a brand, but it's also, like you were saying, there's like a whole background and a whole lore to it. If you were to like, obviously you guys have been doing this a while, so there's probably a lot to it. But like, what would you say if for someone getting into you guys for the first time, what would you say that story is that you're telling? Like, how would it? What are the major players? What are the major events? If someone wanted to get into you today, what would they need to know?
As far as like the actual like comic book story behind the band,
Yeah,
or like,
yeah.
yeah, okay. So which, I mean, it's not really published anywhere because I haven't had a chance to finish the comic book, but so it's kind of always been a little more of a behind the scenes thing that I might talk about in interviews or with fans or something like that. But obviously, if anyone's seen us, we have a certain image and a look, and our war paint and stuff like that. And the concept is essentially, it's the apocalypse, and people are getting bitten, they're turning into zombies, hell is rising to the earth, that kind of thing. And there are a group of rebels that are impervious to the dead's touch. So the bite did not necessarily turn them into zombies, but more augmented certain aspects, like certain powers or whatnot. So, and then they're fighting the good fight within the apocalypse. And then each band member, Kodie Krypt, Tracy Von Krypt, Arlie Von, JJ Wolf, Christ Levine, whatever, each of them has their own character and their own storyline, and they come together and they're going to fight. And that, it's worth mentioning too that we've had a lot of people in and out of the band over the last 16 years. Oh God, I'm dating myself. 16 years of the band. But I don't, because I look at it like an ongoing art project, I don't look at it like there's former members. We always kind of call them active or inactive members, because I still like working with all those people, like, and none of them have left on bad terms. It's always just been like a life circumstance or something. So, but behind the scenes, Eric Allan Poe might come in and do background vocals. We might have all of the guys come in and do gang vocals on something. Somebody might come in and play guitar. I might write a song with one of them. You know, at one point, you know, Daniel left. We got a drummer named JJ Wolf, and then he had to leave, so Daniel came back, and then Daniel had to leave again, so JJ Wolf came back, and it's just like an ongoing thing. And within the framework of the story and the comic book too, we kind of plan on like it's going to start with like the current lineup, and then it'll introduce former members or use them in like backstories and flashbacks and stuff like that. And same thing with the video game thing that we're hoping to do as well. So
well, that I think that's great. I think that's an excellent way of dealing with the situation of having a rotating cast of people, and especially considering it's a multimedia project. I was going to say, because it's a comic book, like the ability to change characters in and out, that adds a depth and a richness to the story that like you may, you know, you could do it with other animation or whatever, but if you were just singing, if you were just writing songs and just doing that, people might people always get attached to lineups, you know, like I know personally I have some like if you look at the Misfits, there are several lineups that have gone through and people are like, oh, this is my favorite, this I don't like this one or whatever. But having a medium where you can change that and have it make sense and be like, no, this isn't something different, this is new, and you know, this is the same, and kind of go through all of that. I think that that's really powerful way of both connecting with the fans and keeping a continuity in what you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard, you know, like Gene and Paul from Kiss talk about, obviously, you know, like sports teams have revolving doors, right? Like same guy playing back then isn't the guys playing now. And that always kind of resonated with me too. And I mean, truthfully, like I said, Scott and I are the only two original guys left, but there's no reason it couldn't continue on without either of us, really. Like it could just keep going. Or Guar, right? Like Guar does stuff like that as well. So I don't know. Grave Corps could live forever.
For sure.
Shtick, right?
Yeah. For sure. So as far as like influences on the story, I mean, you mentioned a zombie apocalypse and stuff like that. Would you say that like action movies and horror movies have been a big influence on the direction that you've taken this project?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up, you know, I was born in '84, so like I grew up on Predator and Terminator and Mad Max, and you know, but also Return of the Living Dead and Reanimator, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So all of that kind of falls into, you know, what this is, which I've all, you know, aside from the Kiss Fits joke I made earlier, I mean, it could literally just be Mad Max meets Return of the Living Dead. I mean, yeah, a more cinematic way of framing it up there. So
Okay. And you because you're, you know, you're talking about doing this in both comic book and video game format. First of all, I'm curious, what kind of video game? Is it going to be like a platformer? Is it going to be like a punch 'em game? Like, do you have any ideas for that? Or, and then as far as the other part, are there any influences comic wise that have influenced the way that you are putting the songs together or putting the story together? I know that's a lot, so we can go through it a little bit.
We'll take it piece by piece.
Yeah.
So as for the video game, it'll be like a punch 'em style thing where you get to like select a character and fight your way through zombies. Full disclosure, I'm not a massive video game guy. Super Nintendo was kind of the height of it for me. Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Mario Kart, stuff like that. So my new lead guitar player, Colin Rott, he actually does video game stuff. And actually, fun fact, Arlie Vaughn, our other, you know, former lead singer, he actually was an executive producer for a video game company outside of
cool.
Grave Corps as well. So yeah, we have some hookups on the video game side there, but that will more be his baby. I'll just kind of oversee it and direction and stuff like that. So I can't really go into depth about it. I don't know what all he has planned.
Fair enough.
But yeah, punch 'em up game has definitely been thrown around while discussing things. So, and then what was the other question? I'm sorry.
So it was about comics and how the medium itself of comic books has influenced both your own storytelling, but also your writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, something I like about comic books is like, in-universe type stuff. Like I grew up a big DC Comics kid, so like the interweaving of like, like here's the Batman issue and then the Superman issue, and then they mention something in this that also gets mentioned in that, and then it all ties together, like universe building just in general. I love that. And then also just, I grew up in the 90s, so Spawn was huge, like that whole Image Comics explosion. And then, I mean, even going through into The Walking Dead, becoming a comic book and stuff like that. And obviously a very successful television series and so on and so forth. But like, I just kind of like with everything, I mean, the ongoing theme is I take from all of it. It all ends up working its way in somehow. Sometimes I don't even realize it. Sometimes I'm talking with someone, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's probably where I got that from. So yeah, nothing like super intentional. I mean, obviously, like there's big hitters that I love, like Frank Miller and stuff like that. Todd McFarlane, his art was insane, and I don't know, man. That's all the basics, really. So
I have noticed in listening to the music that there is a level of quality in your production and recording that is very well done, to say the least. That's my personal opinion. Sometimes people like the lo-fi sound and it can be done really well. You guys have what I would consider an incredibly solid sense of production in your music. And what I'm curious about is, do you think that that's important? Is that something that you guys have actively pursued, or is that something that you don't really feel one way or the other about? I personally, my philosophy when it comes to like music production and stuff is, first and foremost, punk rock isn't an excuse to suck, right? Like that's my first thing is like, if you're going to write punk rock and it's 3 chords and just a blast beat and whatever, you better make sure it's good 3 chords and a blast beat. You better make sure it's exactly how you want it and produced well and everything else. Whether that production is in that lo-fi style or not, it needs to be good. And so what I'm curious about is like, how do you feel though about that?
yeah, so obviously, being a Misfits guy, I always think this quote. I have a friend named Dizzy Drastic. He plays with the Widows and used to be in like the Murdered All, the Rejects. He said something to me once. We were talking. He was like, "If you can't say it with 3 chords in 3 minutes, get the fuck out of here." I don't know if I can swear. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're okay. You're okay.
Okay, all right. But that quote always resonated with me. I love that. So a part of my personality is that for sure, but also Kiss Destroyer, Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies, Welcome to My Nightmare, Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood. Like, like I also come from that world where like there's big layered, bombastic production and really making the dynamics pop and the textures and layers. And so it's the ongoing theme, man. I pull a little from each side, really. And, we want to have, at its core, it's a straight up banger, and it's got the aggression and stuff, but also these are cinematic pieces. And just like a movie, you want to take the listener, through their ears on a story, on a quest, on an adventure or whatnot. So our first album was recorded it was a nice studio, but it was like in a barn essentially. And it was definitely kind of a little more basic, I guess. And then the next thing we recorded, our Reanimated EP, we actually worked with a guy named Matt Sapanik at the Sonic Factory in Des Moines. And Matt, hell of a good guy, super talented. He works, where is he now? Dark Dark Horse in Nashville, I think. But his big, claim to fame then, at least, were that he had engineered on the first few Slipknot albums, and then he also was the producer and engineer for the Murder Dolls' first album, which we were big Murder Dolls guys.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, oh dude, love the Murder Dolls. So anyhow, we worked with him, and it was definitely a step up, right? It's a real factory or a real recording studio, and it's he's a real producer and like he introduced a lot of concepts and ideas that I'd kind of always wanted, but I didn't really know how to get there, and that kind of blew the doors wide open. And then we're very fortunate. We're from we claim Cedar Falls, Iowa as our hometown, and there's a recording studio in Cedar Falls called Catamount Recording Studio, and their big claim to fame was they did the first Stone Sour album, the Grammy nominated or award winning. I'm not 100% sure, but they've done a lot of other stuff. But like it's a very, very legit studio. It was built from the ground up to be a studio. It's there's like 3 main recording rooms. Each one of them has its own foundation, so you're not getting any bleed through or anything like that. It's state of the art. It's awesome. But we work with a producer pretty much since Rise in 2017. We kind of found our home at that studio, and I won't record anywhere else at this point. He's we call him the unofficial 7th member of Grave Corps. His name's Travis Huseman, and he's incredible, and he grew up kind of a Kiss kid as well. We're similarly aged, and he gets it. Like he understands the band and the concept, and where I would probably drive other people absolutely insane about stuff, he's on the same page, and he wants it to be the best that it can be. So we put a lot of time and money and effort into our recordings and making sure that they sound, you got the aggression, you got the energy, but also you have the sonic textures. And down to, so when we record our rhythm section tracks, either Daniel DK or JJ Wolf, the 2 primary drummers for Grave Corps, we actually, and then myself on bass, we drop everything to like actual 2-inch tape, like old school analog. So we record all our rhythm section stuff that way before it gets dropped into Pro Tools, and then we do guitars, keys, samples, vocals, all that stuff, in Pro Tools.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what obviously, like, everyone wants to sound the best they can, in my opinion, but what was it about this particular studio and team that drew you to them in the first place?
Well, so after we recorded at the Sonic Factory, we liked it. We had a great experience there, but it's about a 3-hour drive from where we live. And so recording for like a weekend also means hotel stays and food and drinks and all that. And we're a 6-piece band, plus we usually have some crew and so on and so forth. So it gets expensive quick. So that was a factor. When it was time to do Rise, Matt had actually ended up moving, so we didn't know any of the other like recording people that worked at the Sonic Factory. So we were aware of Catamount. Catamount came with an even greater price tag, obviously, than Sonic Factory, but we were like, well, we'll go talk to them. We'll see what they think. So we kind of had like an initial meeting, showed him our stuff. He was very interested. The vibe felt good, and it was like, well, we'll give it a shot. So we did Rise with him, and the process, it was awesome. It was so effortless. And when it came time to do the next stuff, which I think was Death Ride 77, went back, and then pretty much that solidified it. And we've gone back every time, and we pretty much have studio time booked for the next 3.5 years there. So for the different things I have planned. So
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about we've talked a little bit about live performance and stuff. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Are there any bands that you have played with in the past, or are planning with playing in the future that you think or feel deserve some extra attention, some spotlight put on them that, whether they're a big band or a small band, it doesn't matter, but who do you think deserves a little more attention?
So we've played with I know I talk about the Misfits a lot, but we played with Doyle. He's got a solo band. We've played with them quite a few times at this point, and honestly, they're incredible. I mean, he's a living legend, right? But like the music they're producing, I love it. It's aggressive, it's catchy. You got the trademark, Doyle downpick, just insane guitar sound, but Alex Story's just an incredible front man. We played one show with him, and I'm sure he does this a lot, but I've heard him say other things in between songs. But this one time we played with him, he literally said nothing but this next song is a love song. You can dance to it if you want to, but between every single song, he didn't say one other word, and he had the crowd the whole time. I was like, that's awesome. That's charisma. So yeah, I'd like to see them obviously get some more love, get some more credit. So we recently played with the LA Guns, like 80s hard rock band from back in the day, and they're still killing it. Like
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was great. Sometimes, you see bands from that period playing, at our level or whatnot, maybe not what they were at their, the height of their success, and they're kind of going through the motions. But those guys were they were a class act. They were super nice, and on top of that, we've played with them a few times over the years, but like just recently we played with them this last summer again, and just it was electric. Like it was awesome. They had the audience the whole time, and it was just really cool to see, because I loved the LA Guns growing up, so it was cool to see that. We did an acoustic show with John Corabi recently. He was a singer for Motley Crue in the 1990s, and it was just like we went outside of our box a little bit, and we've done some acoustic stuff, done an acoustic EP, like done some in-store appearance stuff, but we'd never actually done a full proper acoustic show. So but it was an opportunity to play with him, and I was like, I gotta check that one off the list. So yeah, we pulled it off. It went well, but Karabi was awesome. It was exactly what like an acoustic performance should be, like the storyteller, telling about each song and so on and so forth. And 'cause just a guy sitting up there with an acoustic, it's probably not the easiest thing to keep a crowd, but he kept the crowd, dude. It was great. Oh man, I mean, we've played with Wednesday 13 a bunch over the years. Those guys always bring it. Powerman 5000, that's always an inspiration. Dude, every time we've shared the stage with those guys, it's like we got to step our game up. So yeah, I don't know, but just tons of great bands. There's a couple newer horror bands out there too that I got buddies with, and we plan on doing collab on something with. I don't know if I should talk about quite yet, but Von Bolt is one of them. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them at all.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And dude, if you're looking for someone to interview, James Von Bolt, awesome dude.
You heard it. I got the recommendation.
Yeah, dude, do it. I can text him right now and be like, you got to do this show. So yeah. But anyhow, man, yeah, Von Bolt is awesome. I love what they're doing. They're very cinematic, great songwriters. Him and Lisa, their vocals combined are great. They just dropped a new album that I love. It's on repeat. And then Monster Wolf, Mecha Wolf, he's like a wrestler, pro wrestler. Yeah, dude, they're incredible, man. Absolutely incredible. They're super aggressive, and I just love what they're doing. So I would definitely give both those bands a shout out, as far as like horror bands in the scene right now. So absolutely great. Locally, we got some good friends in Switchblade Saturdays. They're kind of like a dark punk, I think is what they call themselves, but they're awesome. They kind of got like that like mid 2000s emo thing going on, but like it's spookier and more well produced. And yeah, they're just a 3-piece too, which is awesome. The stuff that they pull off is incredible. So definitely recommend checking those guys out too.
Okay, for sure. Definitely. Well, I would just want to say as we're wrapping up, thank you so much for your time. I have really appreciated this conversation, you taking the time to allow me this opportunity. And I've said this in the past couple of episodes, but I'll say it again on camera. When I let people onto the show, or when they accept the invitation, it's effectively me inviting them into my home. And I judge people how they treat me on the show, both in between the thing, in between the segments and off. I judge the type of person they are based on the interactions that they've had. And sitting here talking with you, I have had a really good time. I've learned a lot, and I feel that like it's been a really good conversation. So I just want to say thank you again for your time, and thank you for talking about those things that whether it's the production stuff or whether it's anything else, because sometimes this stuff doesn't get talked about. Young songwriters that may watch this someday are going to look at this and they're going to see the advice that you gave, and they're going to think about the things that you said, and they're going to take it forward, and they're going to make the next generation of music, whatever it is. And we're going to look at it and be like, that's awesome. So
Absolutely.
I feel very privileged to be a part of this chain in some small way. So I just wanted to say that I've had a blast talking to you, and thank you for being on the show. I know I said it a lot. I'm sorry, but I really mean it.
Honestly, it's been my pleasure. It's been great talking to you, and I appreciate the level of questions. Sometimes you do things and the questions aren't as well prepared, and this felt very conversational, and you've been an excellent host, man. I've enjoyed my time. So.
Well, thank you. Before we go, where is the best place if people want to, one, purchase your music, and two, listen to it? Where do you want them to go the most?
Yeah, I mean, so we're in the middle of building a web store. So we kind of have an out-of-date one, which I think is like square.site.gravecorps or something like that. If you go to @gravecorps on either Instagram, Facebook, or @Kodie Krypt, KODIE KRYPT, we have link trees at the top of pretty much all of our pages, and there's a link to the web store and our Spotify, our Apple Music. Everything is right there within that link tree. So that's probably the quickest way to find everything. We will have a new web store coming. Hopefully by the time this airs, it will be out. So, and then you'll be able to buy sweet physical copies like these right here. So that I just happen to have sitting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, not this one. This one's super out of print. That's our first album for 09. So, but all the other stuff. So, but yeah, so we'll have physical copies, posters, hopefully the action figures within the next year, all that kind of fun stuff. So
awesome. Well, thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, Dan, you as well.
All right, thank you so much for staying to the end of the episode. I really appreciate it. My name is William Hamilton, and I've been the host of this episode of Heartfelt Horror here on the Heartfelt Horror Media Network channel. We really do appreciate you guys staying to the end of these videos. While you're here, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video, subscribing to our channel, leaving a comment down below, these little things really do go a long way to helping us, get our name out there and get our show out into the algorithm so other people like you can find us. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd really appreciate it. Also, if you're looking for other ways to support the show, we have a Patreon. The link for that is going to be down here. You can copy that into the search bar and you'll find our page. Our Patreon is for $5 a month. For $5 a month, you're going to be able to help us buy all sorts of new equipment. You're going to help us be able to save up for different kind of developmental processes that we're going to be using to bring you new and different kinds of content besides these interviews. So if that sounds like something that interests you, please consider it. Again, it'll be $5, and the link to the Patreon is going to be down there below. So thank you so much for your time, and have a nice day. Bye.